Hello and welcome for another episode of the season of Try This on Wisp Sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kirsten Lauritsen, and I'm really excited. I think every week I'm really excited, but I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest this week. Her name is Caroline Livesey. She's a pro triathlete, and she'll introduce herself in a little bit. But I met Caroline through their podcast, the Brick Session podcast. Her and her husband, Mark, have a triathlon related podcast that's a really solid. It's just such a great resource. And it was something that it was one of the podcasts I'd listened to often as I was trying to figure out what triathlon was and how to get into it. And so I met through being a guest on their show, and Caroline and I have been going back and forth on talking all things about triathlon and life and all that. So I'm really excited to have her here. Caroline, welcome to the show.
Hi. You are just an excited person, Kirsten. It's so lovely.
I think that's probably true.
I had to pick you up because my husband will be mightily offended. Not that he'll listen to something that I've recorded anyway, but it's definitely his podcast. And I occasionally get invited on when a topic is too difficult for him.
Oh. Well, yes. I think you cover a lot of the really great like nutrition and health related topics really well.
Yeah. Nutrition is definitely something that is too difficult for him.
Well, we'll get to talk about that a little bit and towards the end of the podcast. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So like you said, I'm a pro triathlete. Now I'm I'm in my 40s. So I'm, I suppose, a little bit older than some of the nice young pros coming into sport. I've been doing it for a while. And now I guess I seek races out that give me a flavor of adventure, things that I want to do as opposed to like races I have to do for sponsors, money, blah, blah, blah. Like I definitely have much more of a free reign to just go out and seek adventure now. So that's what I do. I also have multiple businesses going alongside that because I don't know, as you probably have gathered from your talks with other triathletes, pro triathletes, there's not a lot of money in the sport. So, so like we have various other businesses going alongside that, and I work probably 3 other jobs at the same time, but nothing, it's all self-employed. So it's all kind of stuff that I do from my computer at home. And I live in Mallorca, which I'm very lucky to be able to do. It's like cycling paradise here. So my main problem is trying not to ride my bike every single day.
Oh man. If our listeners don't follow you on social media, they should. Cause one of the things that I do like almost every day is I check your stuff, and I'm always looking at your stories and things because you either have like a really cool picture of your cycling for the day with like absolutely gorgeous weather. And then also like, I know that hills aren't always the most fun, but they're such a great way to be able to like build strength and, you know, all that on the bike. And you have a plethora of those available to you, which is so nice. Yeah. And then the swimming, oh my goodness, like the images and the videos that you guys post from your swimming adventures, just incredible.
Oh my God, Mallorca is like open water swimming paradise. It really is. And, you know, we're so lucky as well because the pool in Falanice, which is the little village we live in, the swimming pool here is just such a fabulous facility. It's really well managed, really well run. And we basically have a lane each or a lane to ourselves every day. And we have a little group we swim with. And yeah, everything here is just set up really perfectly for training. So like I said, I mean, our main problem is trying not to overtrain.
That's such a unique problem to have.
Well, yeah, I guess. Man. I don't know. I think a lot of people fall into that, problem. Yeah. So.
Well, absolutely. But just I meant more of a unique problem due to having a really cool place to train.
Yeah. I mean, and sky high motivation, that's something I've never struggled with. So I love the training. I just love I love the 3 sports, and gym work too. So I definitely struggle to not train as opposed to struggle to train.
Sure. Well, okay. So have you been like an athlete all your life?
No, not really. I've always been sort of sporty, I guess, adventurous and outdoorsy. My parents were very keen on us just being outside all the time. So, and I did a little bit of this and that at university and things, but I was never, I didn't come to triathlon from a particularly high level sporting background. So
how'd you get into it then?
So I was actually in the military. I was in the army for 10 years. And I before I joined the army, this is like a long time ago, this was 2003. I had this vague idea that I might like to try triathlon one day. And then when I was at Sandhurst, which, is sort of officer training, one of the physical training instructors was a really keen triathlete. And I think at the time he was sort of the inter-services champion. And he just sort of picked me up and said, right, come and do my sport. They're always looking for like the fittest, kind of most keen students to get into their sport. And yeah, they had all the kit there. And that's, I think, one of the barriers to entry in triathlon is just the expense that, the initial outlay of wetsuit, bike and all the jazz. And it just feels like really complicated and a big jump, doesn't it? So I was lucky to have his guidance and all the kit provided for my first sort of race. And then it started from there, but I was really not serious at all about it for many, many years. I just did it for a laugh. And like coupled with being in the military, where I never had a routine, I never knew what I was doing from one day to the next. So I couldn't train consistently. So I just did it for fun, but it was definitely a really big part of my life in the military, being part of the triathlon club there.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, but I didn't really get serious about it until I left. And then shortly after I left was when I turned pro.
Okay. Yeah. What was that experience like of going from amateur to becoming a pro triathlete?
I mean, tough. Like it is tough. I think the style of racing and the race dynamics are just so different. But I was at the stage where I was like, well, I can either win my age group by half an hour or I can actually test myself. And I think for women especially, the biggest thing is just having the confidence to say, do you know what? I'm just going to give this a go. And yeah, I'm not going to immediately win the World Championships. And maybe I personally don't think I'm good enough, but people around me do. And it's an opportunity, and then just put yourself out there. I think that's the hardest bit. And once you've done your first race, it all just rolls from there. And actually, my first race was Ironman South Africa back in 2015. And it was like total rabbit in headlights, just no idea what was going on. Like this race just went sideways. But from that experience, I learned so much. And every time I raced after that, I learned so much. And yeah, it just kind of sort of snowballed from there. And I had some really, really good times and some really good races in my first few years.
Wow. Okay. So there's so many questions that I have off of that. So South Africa was your first race. Just out of curiosity, like what were some of the things that kind of didn't quite go well on that race? And then were there some things that were just some easy fixes that helped you in future races?
Yeah, I think the main thing for me was the swim dynamic is so different in a pro race, because you've got such a small field, like when you're racing age group, and especially in those days where everything was mass start, you're never going to not know where the swim course is, right? Because you've got thrashing bodies around you and you just kind of go with the thrashing bodies. And then, and then I guess the women's field that year at Ironman South Africa might have been about 15 maybe. And it was really, really rough conditions. And the swim boys were miles apart. And when it's rough and you're sea swimming and you go into sort of troughs of waves and you look up and all you see is water and you have to be lucky to kind of look like sight when you're on top of a wave to actually see where you're going. And I got split quickly. Jodie Swallow was racing and she is a very, very good swimmer. I got split very quickly from kind of the lead pack and was in the second group, and there were only about 3 or 4 of us. And I think we might have swum quite a long way. Like, I came out and I was just like I'd been in a washing machine. And I think they may have even shortened the age group swim that year, or I don't know, but we did the full swim, and it just felt like it was going on forever and ever and ever, because I was kind of on my own. I got completely separated from everybody at one point and just was like swimming around, not really knowing where I was going.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh dear. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, mainly the swim, and then I pulled it back a bit on the bike, and then had a pretty decent run, and was surprised how like I hadn't lost as much time. You know, I was on the bike just saying to myself, God, you're so rubbish. I knew you shouldn't have gone pro. You're just nowhere near. And then you come off the bike, and of course there's a little out and back section, and you can see where everyone is. And I was like, oh, I'm really not that far behind. So then you kind of feel like, oh, okay, I can do this. And it gave me a bit of a boost. But yeah, I just remember it being quite an experience. Yeah.
That mindset piece is a really big one that can either get you in trouble or it can help you. But those thoughts that we say to ourselves out on the course. Yeah.
And you know, that's really interesting, because one of the things that I heavily invested in after about a year as a pro was the mindset coaching. And I started to work with a guy who basically, like when I first started working with him, I said, I just don't know how to be confident in these race situations to get the best out of myself. I feel like it's just a bit of a kind of toss the coins up in the air and take a gamble and see how my mind is on the day. And I want to go into the races with more of a like an intentional mindset for it to be a good experience, and for me to go into the race just feeling positive and happy and excited to be there, rather than having all these negative emotions and thoughts about other people who I'm racing and all that kind of rubbish that just takes away from your own experiences. And it was an absolute eye-opener working with somebody on those things. And he was brilliant. His name's Lee Evans, and he's worked with a few other pro triathletes and had great success with them as well. And I think it's such a huge part of any endurance sport, is just, it's so powerful. And if you can harness that power and use it to your advantage, it's huge.
Yeah, I think it's an underestimated one, and one that's undervalued too, I'd say, which as you mentioned, I think from the athletes that I've spoken to, at least, that have put some time into working with a mindset coach, I don't think I've ever come across someone that said it didn't help.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a waste of time.
Right. Yeah. I don't think one person has said that, just because your mind is so powerful. Yeah. And it has, and I mean, I know from my races, especially my last one in December, which many of the listeners of this podcast have already heard about, but when your mind starts to kind of get lost in those thoughts of, like, you start going down a loop of, oh, this is not good. It's amazing how responsive your body is to that.
For sure.
So and having the tools to get you out of that is what working with like a mindset coach and people like that they'll give you tools that can be very, very helpful for getting you out of that cycle, so that you can get back into just doing what you need to do.
For sure. And it's huge. And, I think the tools that you develop that you use during a race, I think one thing you said there was, like, people underestimate how powerful the mind can be. And I think generally people recognize how powerful it can be. What they underestimate is how much it can be trained. And it's, like a muscle, and people spend hours, 20 hours a week or whatever, training their bodies. And then they don't spend any time at all training their minds, apart from stuff that happens kind of organically when they're training and getting through difficult situations in training. And actually, if they spent even, a fifth of that time actually working on mindset training, they would realize that they can harness that power of the mind through intentional practice. And it's about having those positive experiences in races, but it's also about like getting to the start line without having spent 4 or 5 days pre-race, spending all this emotional energy on being nervous or worrying about things that might happen, blah, 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 things you can't control. Just being in that high anxiety, high stress place prior to the race. And I've even seen pros, bawling their eyes out just before a race because they're so worried about it. And that in itself is exhausting. And then you go into a race where you've got to make minute decisions all day long for 10 hours or whatever it is, which really affect the outcome of that race. And you've got to be really, it's almost like being in an exam mind zone. You've got to be really putting all your focus on that race. And if you haven't got those tools to rely on then, and you've spent all that energy already pre-race, then, it just takes from your performance.
Oh, absolutely. I underestimated that for sure with some of my races this year. I was just I was just pretty anxious about them. And I recognized afterwards, because then I had another race where I didn't quite have as much anxiety around it. And I realized how much more calm I was when I stepped up to the start line. And I was like, this is something right here, so that working up to those events is maybe part of it is that you get a little bit more used to it the more that you do. But one thing that I changed that I recognized was really helpful is I set up a week or two, like before we left, but like a week beforehand. What I did is I just set up, like, I knew what my nutrition strategy was going to be. I knew what all of my other, what we were going to basically try to accomplish at that race. And we set those intentions, and then I just let it go. So I didn't really think about it after that. And that helped a lot. As far as just getting me to that race without being like, okay, but wait, so like, what do I need to do here? And what do I need to do here? And what's happening here? And, so yeah.
Do you know, go on. Go ahead. No, and I was just going to say, like, for people coming into triathlon, it can often feel quite overwhelming. Just even thinking about the process you have to go through logistically and on the day of the 3 sports and all the kits and, especially these longer races where you've also, like you say, have to focus on doing the nutrition right and making sure you've got X, Y, and Z prepared in advance and in the right place, in the right bag, blah, blah, blah. That can be so overwhelming for people. And actually having a process and a system that you do before a race to get all those things sorted so that you're not over stressing about them is really important.
Yeah, it's critical. Do you have like one, I'm sure you have many, but do you have like one tool or one strategy that you use right before races, like to make sure that you're in the right headspace? So
I call it like a mind taper. And, people taper physically for a race. Yeah. So one thing I learned through my own experiences really is that I also have to taper the mind into a race. So that means like knocking back on, because I could work every single day because I'm self-employed, so I've always got work. So I know that. Coming into a big race where you, like I say, you need all those you need all that focus and that energy in your mind as well as your body. It's just taking back, like stopping doing everything at once all at the same time, trying to answer calls at the same time as preparing your race bags, or, trying to do social media at the same time as meant to be doing something else. And it's planning that kind of 2 or 3 or 4 days before the race to actually have downtime and to meditate or sleep or just switch off in whatever way that is, that you can do that. Something that's not visual. And that will kind of just give your brain more energy and give it time to relax and give you the ability to have more focus on race day.
Wow, that's a very helpful tip. I think one thing that I learned too, so I learned that for sure that I recognize that for the races where I just kind of didn't work, I scheduled myself out of the office couple of days ahead of time before we left. That helped a ton. But also for the races where I didn't do that, I had more fatigue and wanting to go back to work on the flip side. So like the recovery side after the race, for the races where I just like was working all the way up to it and then still practically like almost working up to race day. The following week, I just didn't want to go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned a lot.
So true. I remember specifically one race and it was Ironman Nice. I can't remember what year it was, but I think it might have been 2016. And I remember landing into the airport in Nice and being on the phone, closing this massive deal that I had going on at work at the time. I was working as a civil engineer still at the time. And like a hugely stressful week trying to close this big deal and flying to this race, which was a massive race for me at the same time. And having this press conference panel pre-race where I was also worrying that I was going to miss a call about this deal. And the race was awful. I mean, I didn't finish. I had a great kind of 7 hours, great swim, great first however many hours on the bike, and then just absolutely bombed. So yeah.
Too much fatigue. Towards the end. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Okay, so we could probably talk about that forever, but I got to switch gears here. So one of the reasons why I was really excited to bring you on the podcast was because you also do a lot of the XTRIs in the world, which have been mentioned on this podcast before, but I'm not sure that many people, I'm fairly new to knowing what XTRIs are as well. Like this is a world that I'm just barely touching the surface of. But do you want to talk a little bit about like what XTRIs are and maybe how you got involved in those?
Sure. Yeah. So XTRI has developed. So XTRIWorldTour.com is the website for the brand, and people can go there and have a look at. There's now 17 races worldwide, but it all started with Norseman, which is probably the one people have heard about in Norway, which for many years has been kind of called the toughest triathlon in the world and the most extreme triathlon in the world and all these things, and is hugely popular. They have a lottery entry system, and every year they get sort of 50 entries for like one place, so it takes some people 10 years to get a slot there. And it's also now the World Championships of XTRI. So they have kind of places that they give away at the other 16 races, which get you a slot to Norseman for the sort of culmination of the season of XTRI. But from that race, these other sort of 16 races globally have developed, and Celtman was the second one in Scotland, which I will also. So this year I'm racing Norseman and Celtman, but there's sort of races joining all the time, but they have a really good system because the brand is very strong, and they have high standards. They don't want any old race coming in, and they have kind of things they look for. So they're always roughly Ironman distance. So 3.8K swim, 180-ish K on the bike, and then 42K run. But they can be there or thereabouts because nobody's going for a fast time on these courses, let's face it.
Right.
But they always have something that's extreme about them. So usually the bike is very hilly and the run is very hilly. The run is always off, or some of it is always off-road. Some of it is sometimes on-road. Some of them are completely off-road, and others are a mixture of surfaces. The bike is always road. So at the moment anyway, although there are thoughts about sort of gravel and things coming into the system, but at the moment, all of the XTRI races are road cycling. But, like, for example, I did one in Greece last year, the GreekHero, and that had 4,000 meters of climbing on the bike section. They generally have sort of between 2 and I think there's one with 5,000 meters of climbing on the bike. So these bike courses are pretty brutal in themselves. And then the run is usually very hilly as well. So
yeah. For my Americans, let's see. So I'm probably going to get this conversion wrong, but like 5,000 meters in feet.
15?
So I think
it's roughly one.
Yeah,
it's roughly 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. So yeah. So the Norseman. So I was looking this up because I was like, oh, 5,000 meters. Like, I've done 5,000 feet. Let's see what that conversion rate is. So yeah, it's 15,000 feet of elevation gain for the full like bike and the run. I think,
that would sound about right.
But then some of these have 5,000 meters on the bike, like alone. And that's what makes these races quite a bit different than like your Ironman races.
I think from my perspective, the way
intense.
The way Ironman has developed is very much around kind of flatter, faster courses. You know, people want to go and get fast times, and like there is just a lot of drafting, a lot of group riding, kind of naturally because of the numbers of people that are on courses and that kind of stuff. XTRI is like the opposite. People go to have a really hard day out. There is no drafting because generally they only allow between 150 and I think 300 is like the maximum number of entries they're allowed for a race. So if you imagine like that number of people on the road, there really is not going to be a lot of, there isn't any drafting, and people are not in it to, it's a sort of community feeling. It's very much people are in this to enjoy this experience of having this crazy adventure, because the other thing that's unique about XTRI is that it's completely unsupported by the race. You have a support crew with you all day. So you basically choose some crazy friends or family to chum you along for this enormous day out. And they are your transitions and they are your aid stations for the day. And so, you know, they meet you after the swim. They've got your bike there. They've got your clothes there that you need to change into. They drive, they kind of leapfrog you. They're not allowed to drive alongside you, obviously, because that would be dangerous, but they leapfrog you and stop at various points and you can stop and speak to them or get what you need from the car or whatever. So, you know, you can have whatever food or drink you want in the vehicle or extra clothes. And then on the run, they usually have a section of the course which they won't let people, it's usually the last section, the last 10K or so of the run route, where they won't let the athlete be on their own, because for most people it will be in the dark, and it's usually off-road. So you don't want people wandering off into the, if you imagine what the last 10K of an Ironman marathon feels like, and then add 5 hours to your day because your bike's taking you twice as long, and it's dark and you're off-road, you need somebody with you just for the safety aspect. So they'll have a kit list of stuff that you need to take, and the person who is coming with you will do the last section of the route with you, running or hiking, walking, whatever, however you're going to finish that route.
It just sounds so cool.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
Oh man, sign me up. No, but yeah, it's on my list for sure. So I don't know if you know this, but I don't think we've talked about it, but the Norseman was first on my radar a very, very long time ago, because I grew up traveling to Norway over the summers. And I know a lot of my cousins who live there. And one of them I knew was dealing with like a chronic sort of illness of some type. And she started training for this triathlon that I didn't really know a whole lot about. And then I heard that it was called the Norseman, and I was like, oh, that's okay, whatever. And so whatever. And she didn't make it past the time cutoff to be able to actually summit and get the full experience. So then she healed herself. She had chronic fatigue syndrome. She got all that taken care of, and then did it again a few years later, and was able to do the whole thing. And then that's when I started like kind of thinking, well, what is that? You know, and then I started looking it up and I was like, oh, that's intense. Like, wow. What is that? You know, and you know, jumping off of a ferry into the fjord, it just my grandfather, born, raised, my whole, like that whole line is from Norway, side of my family anyway. And it just seems like such a cool thing to be able to go back and do, since it's where part of me is from, you know. Sure. So it's on my list of things, but, yeah, I just think the whole XTRI experience, I had a very hard day on my first Ironman. It took me 16 hours to get through the whole thing. So like, I know what it's like to come through in the evening, and have such a hard day that you're just working to get to that finish line.
But then,
so it sounds cool.
Yeah, but then, you know, take that experience because, yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is take that experience, add somebody you love to the mix, or someone that you're really close to that's alongside you, having that experience with you at the end of that day and encouraging you and being there to chat to you, because you're not, you know, you're kind of going at chatting pace by that stage. And
totally.
The thing that I absolutely love about XTRI is just the experience that you share with your team and your crew, and how completely engaged they get in your race. And, you know, they just become so emotionally involved in your race. And I've just had such special experiences, both being a support crew and having, you know, racing and having a support crew there. It's absolutely magic. It's something that's really special about the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see how that would be a really neat day to be able to experience that. Because I think one of the things too, for at least my family anyway, I get feedback at the end of the race of like how, for spectators anyway, there's like some races where it's really great because like Coeur d'Alene, for example, you could see us very like often. You saw us a lot. Whereas some of like the Salem, Oregon one that I did here last year, the half, was horrible for spectators because they barely saw us, you know? And so I know that for that side of things, that would be a really cool experience to be in a support car as well. Just because you get to see the athletes so much throughout the whole day.
I mean, you can basically chat to them off and on all day, and cool. It's very different from them flying past her on a bike and you kind of go, oh, is that her?
Yeah, totally.
You know, while you're sitting having your beer at the pub.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
yes.
You know, and there's some races where you can have somebody on a mountain bike with you while you're running. There's some races where the car is like you're running off road, but it's a track that your car can drive on as well. So it's like a gravel track or something. And so the car can basically be alongside you off and on. So yeah, it's really good. It's good fun. And I have just loved my experiences with XTRI. And so this year I'm doing 3, if my body lets me. Maybe even 4. We're talking about a 5th. So in May, I'll be racing in the Himalayas. That's the first one. And that's a new race. So it's called a prospect race. What they do is they have the first year a race tries to get onto the World Tour. They have a prospect year where they run the race and XTRI come and watch it essentially and experience it with various people and athletes they know and things. And then if it gets a thumbs up, it will join the tour the year after. So the Himalayas is a prospect race, and that's in May, but it's also got the added extreme nature of being at altitude. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. The GreekHero one, wasn't that also one last year that was a prospect race?
Yes. Yeah. So, and it's going to be a prospect race again this year. They didn't tick all the boxes. There were definitely some issues with that race that need to be ironed out before it can be accepted by the World Tour. So they're going to change the route altogether, actually, I think, and do a lot of work on it so that it can be up to scratch for the brand.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Well, I want to get into nutrition, so we will be right back after this short break. So, as you know, nutrition is a big topic, but I try on this podcast to ask some very specific questions to try to break it down a little bit. But in general, what has been your experience with nutrition, and do you have like kind of a journey that you went on as you started figuring out what really fits and works best for you?
Oh my God, yeah, it's not it's not something that's come easy to me by any stretch, and I am very jealous of people who can just shove anything in and can race through it because I have a very sensitive gut. I think I mentioned earlier that I was in the military, and in 2010, I was in Afghanistan for a tour, and I got a really, really bad gastric flu type virus thing that was going around, and I was sort of hospitalized for a couple of weeks. And after that, my gut just kind of gave up.
Yeah.
And I think the virus kicked off just a whole episode of problems for me. And I sort of gave up gluten and lactose. So was lactose and gluten free for about 9 years. And that really helped. But then I got very attached to the idea of being lactose and gluten free, if you know what I mean. I kind of became obsessed with those things being really toxic, which they're not at all in normal quantities, eaten in the right way, in a balanced diet. But I had, convinced myself that they were the devil. And so I definitely went through a phase of under-fueling as a result, and not getting my race nutrition right, for the same types of reasons, trying to find race nutrition, I suppose, that was suitable. And I think my gut just got really sensitive as well because I was cutting out so many things. But yeah, it's been a long journey. Now I eat everything. I'm still pretty careful about gluten because it doesn't really give me stomach problems anymore, but it definitely makes me feel like just lethargic and bloated. So so it's been a bit of a journey, but my current sort of status or thoughts on nutrition is, we've had a lot of conversations about it, but my day-to-day nutrition is extremely balanced, bit of everything, eat the rainbow, tons of fruit and veg. I do eat meat, but not masses. I don't eat fish because I feel very strongly about the way we're treating our oceans. And so I have stopped eating fish as a result. But I get a lot of omegas in other sources. So yeah, and maltodextrin, absolute devil. I don't ever go anywhere near it. And I love the fact that you back me up on that.
Yeah, you share my, Well, I mean, and that's not even necessarily an opinion. It's really, we've seen it in studies over and over again that maltodextrin is causing a lot of issues for the gut. And like, I understand, I really do understand the reason why maltodextrin was brought in because of the issue with overall health with simple sugars. Like, I completely get it, but it's just, as they study maltodextrin more and more, it's basically like causing a bunch of problems for the GI tract, whether you experience gut symptoms or not. So, and there's that,
and I stopped using it because I recognized that it was giving me problems and not really knowing that these studies had shown that it was, it was that. And, and it was a natural progression for me. But, one thing that I feel quite strongly about now as well is, and I know it's coming out more and more in the literature as they start to do more studies on female specific nutrition and physiology, is that females particularly just undereat protein. And we need so much of it. And I think that is something that can be really supportive in a high intensity training program.
Yeah, absolutely. Under eating on protein is a really big category that, is a challenge for a lot of people in general, but women in particular, just because I think for so long it was seen as something that, it's a lot of food when you actually like think about it, and just getting yourself to being able to eat that much. Like a lot of people, I know, because I like put people on plans and I have to slowly work them into them, because if I just give them, like 2,500 calories or 3,000 calories, it has at least, 100 grams or more of protein in it. They just look at me like, how the heck am I going to be able to eat all that food?
Yeah.
So it's just a process of slowly like working them into it. But
yogurt.
Do you have? Yes, yogurt is yes. You find plant-based and just other sources of protein that do help in the overall consumption of protein for sure. Do you have anything in like particular that you love on race day, like fuel sources, like kind of what's your kind of like, what do you love?
So it's really interesting actually, because XTRI is such a different sport to your standard triathlons, that the nutrition is different. It's such a long day. It changes. Just as an example, the GreekHero race took me 14 hours. The Canadaman was, I think, 11 and a half or 12 6 hours. I mean, those maybe don't sound like big numbers to some people, but I would do a standard triathlon or a standard Ironman type thing in 9 and a half. So it's a big difference. And
I'm listening to those numbers being like, oh, okay.
But I think that the other thing is that the intensity level is just less because you're out there for longer, and the terrain like dictates your pace to you. So on the run, for example, you will be walking at times because it's too steep to run up, or the terrain is just too technical. So because the intensity is varied, you can get away with eating more solids and more kind of real food. And one thing that I have found works really well for me is just rice cakes. And I'm not talking about the little round dry things. I'm talking about the types of rice cakes that cyclists use on like the Tour de France, where you cook rice with cream cheese and syrup and sugar and fruit and stuff in it, and it make it into little balls, essentially.
Patties. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had those on my last race and they were brilliant. But yeah, so I don't know, that a lot of protein during the race. And I have found some kind of protein bars that work really well for me. But also having a protein shake in T2, if I'm feeling like I can stomach it, because it's actually quite hard to chug a protein shake like in the middle of a race.
Oh, especially if you're going to go run with the stomach sloshing around with water, like, ugh.
Yeah. But some of the races, what we found, actually this was Mark in Fodaxman in Brazil, that the race had a course where the last 20k of the bike was a descent, essentially, into T2. So we gave him a protein shake at the top of the descent. He drank it within a couple of minutes and then had 20 minutes for it to, like, where he wasn't pedaling, for it to digest. So
I love that.
Those kind of things, little things.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of helpful things right there with what you just shared. There's a lot of helpful tips there that, we focus so much on the carbohydrate side, but a little bit of protein goes a long way on some of these longer race days for sure. I mean, helps to balance out that spike you can get from some of the sugar too.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, this is alongside me taking on shed loads of sugar as well. So
no, I know. Yes, totally.
But I also think it does depend what your body's trained for. And I do enjoy eating protein more than I enjoy eating carbs. And that has been a problem for me in the past. And I do need to be careful about eating enough carbs, but the same is true on a bike ride. Like, I'll quite happily eat a protein bar over a kind of flapjack. So again, I think your body does get used to what you're fueling it with. But yeah, it's all balance, isn't it? And it's what works for you.
Right. Okay. One last question. Do you take any supplements?
Yes, I do. For as long as I can remember, I've taken basically a green, it's called Active Greens. It's a probiotic green powder supplement. And I started taking it when I had this massive problem with my gut. But it's just, it has loads of probiotics in it. It's really supportive for the gut. It's great for digestion and immune system. So I swear by that. Glutamine, I swear by that. It's like magic powder again for the immune system and recovery.
Yep.
What else? I take magnesium for recovery, and I take. I had a big problem with iron. Historically, I had anemia very badly, and I'm quite prone to it. So I do supplement iron 3 times a week.
Yeah, and actually, if you are looking to learn more about that, you and I have a podcast all about it on nutrient deficiencies on the Brick Session podcast. Because we don't have time to dive into that today, but it is a very common one for sure. Iron is one that I've seen a lot of endurance athletes, even men too. It's not just women, but become deficient, and it just wreaks havoc on everything. I mean, it's just
it's awful. And I didn't know I was anemic for quite a long time when I was anemic. And it sounds crazy because you think you would click, but I was just like, I'm really tired from training. But it is it's just like breathing through a straw.
Yeah. Well, coming from somebody who knows a lot of these things, it is even hard for me to sometimes be able to determine what's wrong. So I mean, it's a challenge. It's always a challenge when something's not quite right. Okay. So Caroline, where can our listeners find you?
All the stuff. Instagram is just Caroline Livesey. Twitter is Livesey. We have a YouTube channel called The Brick Session, and there's some great little documentaries on there. We actually went to Costa Rica this time last year, and we just recently published a little film about a crazy adventure gravel ride that we did there over 2 days across Costa Rica, coast to coast. And there's a ton of like training videos on the channel, useful stuff, interesting documentaries. My husband's a great filmmaker, so people can check that out as well. And also I'm on Facebook I've got an elite athlete page. I think it's Caroline Livesey Triathlete.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I feel like I could always talk to you for like hours, but we don't have hours.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's great. And keep up the great work. I love your stuff.
Thank you. And that's our episode for now. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Wisp Sports on all social media channels. And also, if you loved this episode, sharing it with somebody else that you think might love it is a great way to get this podcast out to more people. You can also follow me at Dr. Kirsten on Facebook and Instagram and drkirsten.com. If you'd like to reach us with any comments or questions about this episode, you can at info@wispsports.com. And you can always leave a direct message with us over on social media as well. Thank you for listening, and I will be back next week. Take care.